Have you ever considered how social justice movements have reshaped our political landscape? Picture this. It's the late 18th century, and the world is in the throes of the Enlightenment. Ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity are spreading like wildfire, igniting the birth of social justice movements. The French Revolution, a pivotal moment in history, serves as one of the earliest catalysts. It was a revolt not just against monarchy, but also against social inequality. The cry for liberté, égalité, fraternité echoed across the globe, inspiring others to question the status quo and fight for their rights. Fast forward to the 19th century, and you'll find another milestone: the abolitionist movement. This was a movement dedicated to ending the horrific trade and practice of slavery. It was a time when brave men and women stood up to an entrenched system, risking their lives for the freedom of others. As we move into the 20th century, we see the emergence of the suffragettes, the civil rights movement, and the gay rights movement, each one a testament to humanity's unwavering pursuit of equality and justice. But how did the political entities of the time respond to these movements? Well, initially they were met with resistance and often violence. Governments were reluctant to relinquish power and privilege. They feared the disruption of social order and the potential for chaos. But these movements were unyielding, their collective voices too loud to be ignored. Over time, political entities had no choice but to listen, to adapt. These movements forced them to reassess their policies and ideologies. They pushed them to evolve, to become more inclusive and equitable. And in doing so, they reshaped the political landscape, challenging old norms and creating new possibilities. And thus began the journey of social justice movements, etching themselves into the fabric of politics. They started as ripples in a vast ocean, but over time those ripples turned into waves, powerful enough to change the course of history. As we move forward, it's essential to remember these movements, their origins, and the impact they've had on our world, because understanding our past is the key to shaping a better future. As they took root, these movements began to evolve, but how exactly did this transformation occur? The evolution of social justice movements has been a dynamic process, shaped by the shifting societal landscapes and cultural contexts they emerged from. Initially, these movements were largely focused on attaining basic civil rights for disenfranchised groups. The suffrage movement, for instance, sought voting rights for women, while the civil rights movement aimed to dismantle racial segregation and discrimination. As these movements started to gain traction and achieve their initial objectives, they expanded their scope, tackling more complex and multifaceted issues. They began to address systemic injustices that permeate our society, such as economic inequality, environmental racism, or intersectional discrimination. With time, these movements became more diverse, representing a wide range of identities and causes. For instance, the LGBTQ+ rights movement emerged, advocating for the rights of individuals across a broad spectrum of sexual orientations and gender identities. Similarly, the disability rights movement sought to challenge societal norms and structures that marginalize and exclude individuals with disabilities. This diversification not only broadened the scope of social justice but also amplified its impact. As these movements grew, they started to permeate the political realm, influencing public opinion and policy. They brought issues that were once considered taboo or unimportant into the mainstream discourse, pressuring political leaders to acknowledge and address these concerns. Moreover, the evolution of social justice movements also brought about a significant shift in the political mindset. It disrupted the conventional left-right dichotomy, introducing a new axis of political alignment based on social justice values. This shift has been particularly evident in recent years as issues like racial justice, gender equality, and climate justice have become central to political campaigns and policymaking. However, this transformation has not been without resistance. As these movements challenged established norms and power structures, they faced backlash and controversy. Despite these hurdles, they persisted, continually adapting and evolving to counter these challenges and push for progress. With time, the political landscape started to mirror the ideologies of these movements. But what has been the real impact of these movements on our political landscapes? Social justice movements have unquestionably left a profound imprint on the world of politics. They've given rise to new political ideologies, altered the course of policymaking, and even played a role in the rise and fall of political leaders. There's no denying the positive effects these movements have had. They've brought attention to issues that were previously ignored or swept under the rug. They've given a voice to marginalized groups and have pushed for policies that aim to level the playing field and promote equality. Consider the civil rights movement of the mid-20th century. It not only led to the passage of groundbreaking legislation like the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, but it also shifted the political alignment of many African Americans from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. Similarly, the women's rights movement has been instrumental in pushing for gender equality in politics. It led to the ratification of the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote, and continues to fight for equal representation in government and equal pay in the workforce. On the flip side, these movements have also been associated with certain negative impacts. They've been accused of promoting identity politics, which can lead to division and conflict. Critics argue that these movements can sometimes push too far, leading to situations where political correctness stifles free speech and open debate. Moreover, the rise of social media has allowed these movements to gain momentum quickly, but it has also led to the spread of misinformation and the amplification of extreme views. This has the potential to polarize societies and create a climate of hostility and mistrust. And let's not forget, these movements have also had a profound impact on election outcomes. They've mobilized voters, influenced public opinion, and have even been instrumental in the election of certain political leaders. The influence of these movements is undeniable, but it hasn't always been a smooth journey. But every coin has two sides. What are the challenges and controversies associated with these movements and their political influence? Let's take a closer look. As social justice movements continue to reshape our political landscape, critics from conservative corners voice their concerns. They question whether the influence of these movements on politics is a beneficial development or whether it poses potential drawbacks. One of the main criticisms revolves around the concept of identity politics. Critics argue that social justice movements have the potential to fracture society into competing groups based on their unique identities, rather than fostering unity and a shared sense of community. They worry that this could lead to division and conflict, rather than the intended harmony and equality. Another point of contention is the fear of ideological imposition. Critics suggest that social justice movements, in their quest for equality, may inadvertently impose their ideologies on others, stifling diversity of thought and freedom of speech. They argue that in a truly democratic society, all perspectives should be respected and given space to thrive, not just those that align with a particular movement's ideals. Furthermore, some critics suggest that these movements may inadvertently encourage a culture of victimhood, where individuals identify more with their struggles and injustices than their strengths and potential. They argue that this could lead to a lack of personal responsibility and accountability, which are fundamental to a thriving society. Lastly, there's a concern about the potential for these movements to influence policy based on emotion rather than fact. Critics argue that while empathy is important, policy decisions should be grounded in empirical evidence and rational debate, not just emotional appeals. These challenges and controversies highlight the complex nature of the intersection between social justice and politics. They underscore the importance of ongoing dialogue, critique, and self-reflection within these movements. The intersection of politics and social justice is a complex and contentious space, and it's crucial that we continue to navigate it with nuance and respect for all perspectives, ensuring that the pursuit of justice doesn't inadvertently create new forms of injustice. So, where do we go from here? What does the future hold for social justice movements and their role in politics? The future of social justice movements is not set in stone. It's fluid, dynamic, and ever-evolving. As we gaze into the crystal ball of the future, it's clear that these movements will continue to play a transformative role in shaping political landscapes. We can expect to see a continued expansion of the digital sphere. Social media platforms have been instrumental in spreading the messages of social justice movements far and wide. They've amplified voices that were previously unheard or marginalized, and this trend is likely to persist. However, with this increasing reliance on digital platforms comes the challenge of navigating the murky waters of disinformation, cyberbullying, and privacy concerns. Looking ahead, it's also likely that social justice movements will increasingly intersect with other global issues. Environmental justice, for instance, is already a burgeoning field. As the world grapples with the urgent threat of climate change, The voices demanding justice for those disproportionately affected by environmental degradation are growing louder. Moreover, the future of social justice movements is likely to be characterized by an increasing demand for inclusivity. The call for intersectionality, the understanding of how different forms of discrimination overlap and intersect, is becoming more prominent. This means that movements will not just be advocating for one group, but for all marginalized communities. However, this broadening scope can also present challenges. As movements strive to be more inclusive and intersectional, they risk diluting their message or alienating certain groups. This is a delicate balancing act that will need to be navigated with care. And let's not forget the political landscape. As social justice movements continue to influence politics, it's likely that we'll see a push for more diversity in political representation. This could mean more women, more people of color, and more LGBTQ+ individuals in positions of power. But this won't happen without pushback. There will be resistance, there will be conflict, and there will be controversy. Only time will tell how this dynamic relationship between social justice and politics will continue to unfold.